The latest Galaxy S26 Ultra benchmark leak just killed a long-running fantasy. Even Samsung's most advanced Exynos chip still can't clearly beat Snapdragon. And here's the twist, the Snapdragon version wasn't even running at full power. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It really helps me keep bringing you more tech breakdowns like this one. According to new benchmark scores shared by ICE Universe, the Galaxy S26 Ultra is shaping up to be a noticeable performance jump over the S25 Ultra. That part isn't shocking. What is interesting is how this leak resets expectations around Samsung's chip strategy, especially the idea that Exynos would finally overtake Snapdragon this year. Why does this matter? Because for years, Galaxy buyers in different regions have essentially been getting two different phones. Same name, same price, but very different performance stories depending on whether your model runs Snapdragon or Exynos. Samsung fans have been waiting for the year when that gap disappears, or flips. These new benchmarks suggest that moment still hasn't fully arrived. Let's start with the Snapdragon numbers. The alleged US variant of the Galaxy S26 Ultra, powered by the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, scored around 3,466 in single-core and 11,035 in multi-core on Geekbench. That's a solid jump from the Galaxy S25 Ultra, which managed roughly 3,137 single-core and 9,769 multi-core. And here's the important part. This Snapdragon chip was underclocked during testing. The Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 is designed with two prime cores that can reach up to 4.6 GHz, alongside 6 performance cores topping out at 3.6 GHz. But the benchmarked device was running its high-performance cores at about 4.19 GHz. ICE Universe believes at full configuration, the S26 Ultra could push close to a 3,920 single-core score, which would be a serious leap. So yes, Snapdragon is still doing what Snapdragon usually does, dominating single-core performance. And that's critical for everyday tasks like app launches, UI smoothness, and general responsiveness. Now let's talk about Exynos, because this is where things get more nuanced. The Exynos 2600, which will power the Galaxy S26 series in select markets, is built on a more advanced 2-nanometer manufacturing process. On paper, that's a big deal. Snapdragon's chip is still using a 3-nanometer node. Smaller nodes usually mean better efficiency and thermal behavior, and potentially better sustained performance. Previously leaked benchmarks suggest the Exynos 2600 could hit around 3,309 in single-core and 11,256 in multi-core. That multi-core score actually edges out the underclocked Snapdragon result. And that's likely why ICE Universe was very specific when calling Snapdragon the leader. He pointed mainly to single-core performance. But here's the thing, raw benchmark numbers don't tell the whole story. They don't show sustained performance under heat, battery efficiency during long gaming sessions, or how aggressively the phone throttles under pressure. In fact, a reference device running Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 reportedly crossed 12,000 points in multi-core testing, suggesting Qualcomm still has more headroom overall. So does that mean Snapdragon wins again? Probably, but not by the landslide people expected. And that's actually the most important takeaway here. The performance gap between Snapdragon and Exynos is shrinking, not disappearing, but narrowing enough that most users won't feel a dramatic difference in day-to-day use. No matter which Galaxy S26 Ultra you buy, it's gonna feel fast, very fast. This also ties into a bigger picture for Samsung. Snapdragon chips are expensive, and rising component costs are one reason flagship phones keep getting pricier. Samsung reportedly spends less on Exynos-powered models, even though those savings aren't being passed down to customers. Still, from a long-term strategy perspective, a competitive in-house chip gives Samsung leverage and options. So while the fantasy of Exynos clearly beating Snapdragon might be dead for now, something else is happening instead: parity. And that's arguably more important. If Samsung can deliver near Snapdragon performance with Exynos better efficiency thanks to 2-nanometer manufacturing and stable long-term performance, the chip debate becomes less about winners and losers and more about trade-offs. At the end of the day, the Galaxy S26 Ultra looks set to be a genuine performance upgrade, regardless of region. Snapdragon still wears the performance crown, especially in single-core speed, but Exynos is no longer the easy punchline it used to be. And honestly, for most users, that's the best outcome possible. What's your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments section. See you in the next video. Take care.